All right, it's time for us to get in our In the Cubicle feature. This is when we speak about all things that have to do with the workplace. Hey, you might be an employer and you think you're the one interviewing, but maybe you're being interviewed by the candidate themselves. In the past, negative word of mouth would have been limited because we didn't have so much of social media. But today, online commentary is starting to have an impact on African companies. Attracting the best employees for mid and senior leadership positions remains a high stake game in the talent market, particularly in in-demand sectors. A major factor influencing the ability of companies to land exceptional talent is their reputation. Increasingly, however, current and former employees, as well as candidates who engaged with the company during the hiring process, are making their voices heard online if they feel the experience with the company was negative or if it was worth their while. So, how does negative employee and candidate experiences impact perceptions and companies' ability to land top positions? Advaita Naidoo is back with us, Africa Managing Director at Jack Hammer, an executive search firm. Advaita, welcome back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk a little bit about this word of mouth. One would think that, it's something that just affects you as the employee, but it does affect the employer, especially now in the world where you've got, career platforms like LinkedIn, and people are just talking freely on those platforms and expressing their experiences in different ways.
Exactly. I think that the important thing to note is that there's no such thing as a silent candidate anymore. Previously, we used to be isolated, but what used to be whispered at dinner parties is now permanently archived online. And sometimes it could be something like a cryptic LinkedIn post, but then there's Hello Peter, there's Glassdoor. They can be anonymous, and they're platforms of accountability. I think there's a term for it. It's the feedback economy. That's what we live in right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so companies have lost their monopoly on their own story. But even if it's not public, the whisper network can really also kill the company's credibility. As much as a big PR scandal, we all have WhatsApp chats or industry events. We chat offline a little bit, and then eventually the stories aggregate, and we can't ignore something as an isolated experience. So what's happened is that reputation has become hard currency in a talent war, and companies really can't treat talent attraction as an HR problem. It is a brand issue.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about that. There's hearsay, and then there's I'm bitter, and I'm going to just speak about this company because I just didn't get that job. And then there is the real review of someone being genuine. Some would say it's hard to tell between these different factors.
I think there has to be a level of authenticity. And yes, we want to teach people critical thinking and be able to separate what is hearsay and an isolated experience from what is, something that might be a bit more widespread. But at the end of the day, you can't Photoshop culture. You can't run an employer brand campaign to fix internal dysfunction. And the stories that people tell when the leadership isn't there, or the things that they experience, they will always come back to haunt a company. Values have to be operational. It can't just be what whatever a company puts on its website. And if there is an aggregation of stories like this, or if there is an experience that somebody else can see for themselves, or the same thing happened to me, then that's going to start to build up.
Well, we thought, Advaita, that the culture was that the person who's going for the interview is the one that should be trying to impress the employer. But it seems like the interview is gone two ways now, where the employer also has to make sure that they're impressive to people that they'd like to bring into their company and they'd like to work for them. How does a brand know where their brand lies? Or how does an employee know where their brand lies when it comes to what people out there think of them, or potential employees will think of them?
Yeah, so just to pick up on your first point, I think the false comfort of a high unemployment rate, especially in South Africa, it blinds companies to a truth, which is that top talent always has options. You can absolutely fill roles, but you can't always attract excellence if your reputation is poor. So as with any connection, even if you're dating somebody, it has to be a two-way connection, right? And so companies should view the fact that they are equally being interviewed by potential candidates, because there has to be a match, not just from a technical competency perspective, but from a connection. Can I work with this person, and can this person work with me as a leader? I think employer brand can't just be what your marketing department says. It can't just be outbound messaging. It's what internally what your employees whisper, and right now those whispers can be amplified. And then in order to find out what people are saying about you, there are ample platforms out there. There are companies that run employee engagement surveys that are supposed to be anonymous to find out what people are saying about you internally. And then there are platforms out there. You can go onto LinkedIn to hear what people are saying about you. Glassdoor is a bit more like TripAdvisor of the workplace right now, except you can't really delete a bad review. You can go out there and hear what people are saying about you.
Because the interview process has also changed, Advaita, it's laborious, right? It has many processes in itself. You're not just getting interviewed once. It's probably like a LinkedIn connection with an agent, and then they take your CV through, and then you get to meet people on LinkedIn, and then you get another test to make sure that you've got the technical skills. Then you meet them finally at a location, and then finally you're like, okay, this process has been long term. And that's the thing that companies need to understand, that the process in itself is not just your investment as a company, it's also the candidate's investment in terms of the time that they're giving you. So make that experience also worthwhile. At times what companies get wrong is that process in itself, whereby they don't even honor doing that process in a way that honors the candidate. And at times that frustrates many candidates in that season and in that process.
Yeah, I think a lot of processes have just become too systematized, and we're taking that human element out of something that is actually inherently human. And again, like I said, values have to be operational. They have to show up in every step of the process, in how your HR team emails your candidates, how people give feedback, how leadership will exit people, how they manage the people who do then just get the job. Trust becomes a competitive edge, and your reputation and how you treat people, it shortens the hiring cycle. It improves the retention, it builds advocacy. And again, if we take the humanity out of the process, then it really just becomes, it could be a temporary before they move on to the next place where they're going to feel a little bit more appreciated.
So when it comes to fairness, there's been many times where candidates will have left interview processes and they thought to themselves, this is so unfair, but there was no real place to go and complain about that. They just go home, cry a little bit, try again. But let's speak about how fair processes should be these days, and why employees should be focusing on the fairness of their employee processes.
I mean, look, I think fairness for some people can be a little bit subjective. Like you said earlier, sometimes if somebody doesn't get a job, they start to question the fairness. I think the easiest antidote to that is for an employer or anyone who's hiring to be very transparent about what the process is going to be, and also transparent about the fact that there may be other candidates in the process. And it's not that your qualifications or your experience wasn't relevant for the job. There just may have been somebody who was inherently more qualified or who was a better fit. Again, people want to be treated as people. And when you ghost people and you don't give them feedback and you leave them with a poor experience, that is what is going to make them question the fairness. I think it's, again, we live in a feedback economy, and people are evaluating every interaction as an experience. And yes, there's going to be a little bit of an information asymmetry, and there's going to be power in the people who are making the decisions. But as long as you treat people as people, this really shouldn't end up in a question of fairness or whether somebody was unfairly passed up.
Advaita, we'll come back to you after the break. Let's take a break right now. I will continue this conversation for our In the Cubicle feature.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802.
Ready to connect, innovate, and be inspired? It's all happening at Africa's Tech Festival, where Africa's technology meets the world. From the 10th to the 13th of November in Cape Town, Join global leaders, investors, and innovators driving the future of Africa's digital economy. Don't miss the continent's biggest week in tech. Get your pass now at africatechfestival.com.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
We're chatting about how negative employee and candidate experiences can impact the perceptions and companies' ability to land top talent. We're still chatting to this about this with Advaita Naidoo, African Managing Director at Jack Hammer, which is an executive search firm. Let's speak about landing top talent because, we think about an employee as just an employee, but there are certain talent out there that employees are really fighting to get. And if you're one of these top talent people, what is it that you should be looking for in a particular company, in a particular brand, in a particular employer, both online and off, that it would make you want to be a part of this company?
So I think the important thing to note is that even in markets where there's an oversupply of candidates, volume doesn't always equal quality or the right experience, because you can have 500 applicants for a role, but only 5 who embody exactly what you're looking for. And those 5 people are weighing up a company reputation as heavily as they are the salary and who they're going to be working with, because the employer brand becomes the filter. So as the employer, you need to have this very unique value proposition in order to attract top talent. And then as top talent, you should recognize that you do have choice and you can make your decisions based on so much more than just what the trajectory is going to be like. Are there people there whom you can work with? Do you see a place for you to develop as a person and not just as a leader? And weigh up the metrics that are important to you.
So if a company wants to make sure that their brand is well represented online and they've got, good reviews on especially these work-based platforms like LinkedIn, etc., do they just go on and, get their own reviews out there? Because I know there's a shortcut to everything. Or is it more complex? Is it a long-term strategy that they need to put in place to make sure that they look lucrative and fair to those they want to employ in the future?
Absolutely. I think a lot of companies talk about what their employee value proposition is, but it kind of stops at a certain point. But the best HR teams or leadership teams, they use marketing principles, which are all about consistency and communication and care. And it's not just a nice brochure that you put together or some culture strategy that you do and then forget about it. Because like I said, people evaluate every single interaction as an experience. So your onboarding might be great or your interview process might be great, but then their onboarding is problematic. And the way people treat employees spills over into other areas. When people sense coherence between how companies say and how they act, they find a deeper connection with that company. And I think it's Simon Sinek that says companies or customers will never love a company until the employee loves it first. And that love shows up in every single. So there has to be a golden thread between all aspects of this value chain, from the employees to the customers. Your brand messaging has to be really coherent.
Mm-hmm. And what happens if you do have this bad reputation online? Maybe you have kind of rubbed a lot of your possible candidates in a wrong way. How do you sort that problem out?
I mean, I think ownership and acknowledging that you haven't done things in the best way in the past, that's probably the first step. People want authenticity and people want to see that you're trying to fix something that was broken. Again, like you said, first impressions happen before the interview. If somebody Googles your company and finds stories of toxic culture, you've really lost before you've even started. Your reputation digitally remains archived. But if you acknowledge that there has been a problem and you show that you're taking real steps towards fixing that problem, that's really going to set you forward, because respect and transparency, they don't cost anything.
Let's go to the other side of this conversation, especially considering what you are writing about a company if you were a candidate. What must you actually be thinking about as well? Because I know we're focusing on the employer, but as a possible candidate for other positions as well, what must you actually be considering when you are making a review of a company that might be negative? because someone else is also going to read your profile as well and see what you also say about other companies. What are the considerations that a candidate should also have?
So I think if you talk about it as being personal experience and lived experience, again, that's authentic. If you are not doing it in a way that is just all out bad mouthing another company, but treating it as something of a learning, that makes a difference. And I think if you're not just complaining and you genuinely want a company to improve, or you're treating it as a learning experience for yourself, that's going to make a difference. Look, it's never a good idea to go out and put companies or individuals on blast. I think that that speaks a lot to your character. But if you're treating it as a culture issue and you are drawing attention and being authentic about it, then the right company is going to appreciate that sentiment.
Advaita, earlier on, you were speaking about the fact that, there's high unemployment in many parts of the continent. So companies think, you know what, they can have it as they please. They can do whatever they want to do, and they can just get away with it. That oversupply of applicants as well can also be an area in which people say, you know what, we are the key place where everyone wants to work, where maybe the marketplace is just saturated with need, with people wanting to actually get into any type of job. Why is that kind of perception wrong when you are approaching recruitment?
Yes, I think in leadership searches that we've done, the most senior and the most experienced, the most qualified and the mobile candidates are the ones who withdraw quietly when they pick up the negative reputational cues, or they feel that there is a power asymmetry, because like I was saying earlier, it does need to be a love connection. I think companies have had this false comfort that they are in the pound seats, and this is a completely the wrong the wrong perspective to take. And I think companies also need to think about how this ties into wider, like ESG and governance narrative. They love to talk about things like this at their annual strat days or the results presentations, but how you approach recruitment and empowering your people is increasingly viewed as a proxy for how you treat ethics externally. And again, employer brand can't just be what your marketing department says about you. It's what people say about you.
Absolutely. We'll wrap it up there, Advaita. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to chat to you on these matters. Where can people go to find out more?
Jack Hammer is a Pan-African executive search firm. Please check out our website. It's jhammerglobal.com.
Thank you so much. That's the Africa Managing Director at Jack Hammer, Advaita Naidoo, chatting to us about this really interesting one. Whether or not, companies should be making sure that they have good reviews online so that they can land top talent. It's 10:28 Central Africa time. Let's take a short break.